Matters with Paul Rosen.
Our diets, our Western diets in America are just really, you just don't realize how poor they really are.
What would you say to others who would like to feel better?
Sometimes you need to find the instruction. That's where the testing and everything comes in, because without that knowledge, there's no way I could have got to the point where I'm at today.
Straight talk about health.
And then I start preaching and telling them what I've been doing. And this guy named Paul Rosen has changed my life.
With your host, Paul Rosen.
By the way, the information contained in this program is not approved by the FDA, nor intended to treat, diagnose, or claim to cure any medical condition or disease as defined by Western medicine. However, skilled practitioners of many disciplines have found nutrition response testing to be a highly reliable supportive technology for assessing the health and fitness of the body's functional system.
Surely you've heard in the news about the fact that Americans are becoming obese. We're just a fat nation. It seems hopeless. And you know the thing about most of that news, Paul? It happens to be true. So we'll talk more about that momentarily. First, though, would you like to hear from Frontier Pete?
Absolutely.
Here we go.
A moment with me, Frontier Pete, all natural woodsman. Making an emergency stop at Billy Bob's General Store with my pal, Chainsaw Jack.
So just why are we here, Pete?
Oh, hey, welcome to the store, Pete. And I see you brought chainsaw...
Jack, we're here to address this body odor of yours.
What body odor?
Hang on.
Initiating oxygen release.
Okay, better. Just had that installed.
Not a moment too soon.
Okay. Maybe I have some aroma.
Maybe a yak has some hair.
I'm wheeling over just what you need, Jack.
What in Sam Hill is that?
This is Rebecca, the air freshening plant.
Looks more like a man-eating plant.
Yeah, it has those great big jaws. Wait! Whoa!
Billy Bob, that plant's eating Chainsaw Jack.
Yep, usually just takes a minute or so.
Jack's been completely devoured. He's gone.
Yeah, and the air in here has never been fresher, has it?
Gotta admit.
Oh, Rebecca, hang on.
Initiating oxygen release.
Well, that seems pretty extreme, having a man eating plants to remove the offending odors. In this case, the offending odor was in the person of Chainsaw Jack.
All I got to say is, Frontier Pete is a widely experienced. I mean, his adventures are boundless.
Oh, I think that's true, and I think they're also very relatable. So if you have some kind of...
Where have you ever bumped into a man eating plant?
Well, we'll talk. So let's turn to a more pertinent subject, perhaps, which is
serious.
Which is the fact that we as Americans are getting heavier, are we not? Is that true?
And that's not just for adults; that's for children as well. There's plenty of information out there that says that overweightness is a huge problem, and it is. We don't need to go into any studies or anything like that, but I think it's important to focus on some of the myths and truths of weight loss and understanding how to maintain a healthy weight.
So before you go on with that, are these myths and truths, are they going to be good news or bad news for us, or kind of a mixed bag?
Oh, I think in all cases good news, because to know what the truth is, to know about information that's actually can effectively help you strategize and get where you want to get to is always good.
All right. So what are some of these myths then regarding weight loss?
Well, just in general, we know that we live in a capitalistic society, which is all about marketing and any edge that a company can get to market something to someone is one that will be taken. And it's no less true in the health and healing industry, the nutritional industry as well. They're just, example upon example upon example of, corporations simply, misleading and really in some cases I think pushing the limit there, you could almost say criminal, but not many attorneys general are going to take Kellogg's to court for touting Tony the Tiger's exclamation, this cereal is...
It tastes great.
Great!
It tastes great, they say. Well, you know what? That's part of the truth they're selling right there. It does taste great, but it doesn't mean it's great for you, right?
Yeah, and, so do, any kind of person who's gotten involved with any other kind of drug addiction. They also think it's great until it isn't.
Do you think we're less credulous as consumers than we used to be years ago? I mean, for years and years, when I was a kid back in the day, we saw those ads for sugary cereals while we were watching our cartoons, and we thought that was perfectly fine. Do you think there is more awareness now about the dangers of those kinds of snacks for kids in the morning? Because basically, when you give your kids something like Frosted Flakes or any of the others, Cocoa Puffs, you name it, you're giving them a bowl of candy for breakfast.
Indeed. And the the sugar lie is essentially, has been revealed and continues to be expounded upon. And so caring parents will take heed. And so there's more information out there as far as that's concerned. But what did it take to finally dent the tobacco industry?
A multi-billion-dollar lawsuit.
Same thing has to happen in the sugar industry. They use the same techniques, the same diversionary techniques. Honesty is just not in the self-interest of the processed junk food and beverage industry. So the big problem, of course, is how the governmental regulatory agencies are now totally and completely intertwined and bound to the corporate industry interest. That's the big issue, and that's because people in the industries who rise to a certain level of recognition, CEOs and the like, are tapped to run the overall governmental agencies that oversee, our health.
That's true. There is a very disturbing revolving door between regulatory agencies and the companies they're supposed to be regulating.
And the for-profit deception then infiltrates these governmental organizations, the USDA, the FDA, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then they become unreliable, or we cannot, let's put it this way, we cannot rely upon them to guide us in the right direction. So I'm not, starting with this because I'm, touting a great, conspiracy out there. It's not conspiracy. It's reality. It's the way, a capitalist system sort of manifests itself, at least in our culture anyway. So the key here is not to, pull your hair out. Of course, between you and I, we don't have that much, but is not to pull your hair out about B, C, D. Let's truth be true.
Hey, I'm just letting the brutal truth sink in, but still,
it's not to let that be the story. That's not the story. The story is us and coming to terms with that truth, and then beginning to take active steps to take control. That's what Paul Rosen's all about. That's what Eco-Natural Family Healthcare is all about. That's what nutrition response testing is all about. That's what this show is all about. Learn the real information, the information that will help you get to where you want to go if you're interested in your health. And that is, to a better quality of life. And that's it. That's all. So that's what I'm hoping we're doing with this weight loss stuff. One of the biggest, speaking of myths, one of the biggest myths is that a calorie is a calorie. This just isn't true.
So if a calorie is not a calorie, Paul, what is it? And related to that, why are we so focused on calories? Because many foods that bill themselves as being healthy will immediately say we're low calorie.
Just like every sort of misunderstanding, it was, presented by scientists saying that a calorie is a calorie, regardless of, what the source might be. The problem is that a calorie is not a calorie because the environment with which, in which it is released makes a big difference. A calorie in the atmosphere versus a calorie in the body, and how the body reacts to it metabolically, is totally different.
So if a food is billed as being low calorie, is that necessarily a good thing?
No, it's not. And you should avoid basically all low calorie food.
And related to that,
you should avoid it 100%.
Now, we'll expand on that, but based on your point a moment ago, that calorie in the unit of food, whatever you're consuming, is not the same as the calorie that you take into your body? Is that what you're saying?
So when it comes to calories, it's far more important to look at the source of the calories rather than counting them. Okay? This means that you can have the same amount of calories from, say, fructose, which is fruit sugar, or glucose, fructose or a protein, fructose or fat. But the metabolic effect will be entirely different despite the identical calorie count. That's what I'm saying.
Okay, well, that does make sense. So then why should we avoid foods that say they're low calorie?
Because they're more highly processed. There's very little nutrient density in them. Low calorie foods, unless you're talking fresh foods. So, for example, a celery versus a sweet potato.
But they're often like power bars and stuff like that that'll say, hey, we have protein and low calories and whatever.
Exactly.
Whatever it is.
But for those, well-heeled nitpickers, and I laud you for it.
What are you spraying into yourself over there?
This is, the air today.
Uh-huh.
I don't know if you noticed, but it's quite smoky out there.
Right. We have this forest fire issue on the West Coast.
Yeah, and it does impact my, like I've got, more phlegm in my throat. I've got more, it's raspier.
So you have to moisturize your vocal cords, basically.
That's what I'm trying to do.
Okay, well, that's
good. So folks don't get tired of me clearing my throat.
I just heard that spray, and I thought maybe you'd take an inspiration from the front.
You mean this one?
That's it right there.
Oh.
But I was distracted looking at my notes, and I heard the spray. I thought maybe you'd taken a hint from the Frontier Pete episode, and we're,
and why wouldn't
putting
we?
on some deodorant or something.
Frontier Pete is a reliable character, right?
We've established that.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so the thing with calories is it doesn't matter, or it does matter greatly, where those calories are coming from. And if a food is low calorie, well, so what? It's so processed. Maybe it's doing you more harm than if you just had something that was fresh and healthy and not necessarily low in calories.
Absolutely. Stay away from low-calorie processed food. That's the way I should phrase it, really, so people get it. Stay away from low-calorie processed food. The results on your body are not what you think.
So why the focus on calories? Because as we've established, many foods advertise themselves as being low calorie.
Right.
And they say, hey, it's okay
many processed foods.
It's okay to eat this thing because it's low in calories.
The reason to focus on calories is because that's what weight loss programs focus on, is calorie intake.
Okay, and why is that, though? Have we been sold a bill of goods?
Yes. We've been sold a bill of goods.
Okay, so there should be other things we're focusing on for effective, healthy weight loss than calories.
Yes. And yes.
I was kind of leading myself by the nose to that point, but that's the point I wanted to get to. So where do we go from there?
So one of the key dietary changes that you have to consider is to implement a swap of carbohydrates from sugars like fructose and grains to larger amounts of vegetables. And, this kind of taps another myth, healthy fats.
And we've established many times in your talks that there are healthy fats because they are sources of what?
They're
Fats are sources of fats.
That question is, I don't understand what that question is.
Well, why fats? Why healthy fats? Why
because,
are they healthy?
I mean, number one, your heart, fat is what your heart runs on.
So the healthy ingredient in fat is fat.
Yeah.
Okay, that's the point I was getting to.
Oh my gosh. Even my producer Dave is shaking his head at that.
Well, maybe he should.
What is the most important quality in fat?
Well, you said though there are healthy things in fats.
I say fat.
Well, we're just clarifying. we're just getting to that point.
The reason why this is so important, the reason why you've got to cut the sugars and the fructose. And of course, what does that imply? That implies that fruit is not as healthy as you think it is. So you don't swap out, your sugar and your, honey and your maple syrup and your, whatnot and grains, right, for fruit, because fructose has actually been shown to be potentially the most injurious to your your metabolic process, your metabolic mechanism.
So what about all those folks, and I just might be one of them, who years ago swapped our Snickers bars for, say, an apple or an orange?
Exactly.
Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
Well, in terms of the biggest picture, it's certainly a good thing. But in terms of, with respect to restoring health and also weight loss, it's not that great.
So we shouldn't swap out the Snickers maybe for a bushel of apples.
No, you
should
should just
full of oranges.
You should just swap out the Snickers for, some healthy vegetables and healthy fats and good high quality protein.
Again, the source of the calories and other things is important as well as the calorie itself.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because the reason for this is that it's, and the reason why it's so important to make this swap is because starchy carbs like potatoes and rice and sugar and grains, but fructose in particular, right, elevates your insulin and another hormone called leptin. This is really important, leptin levels. Leptin is the hormone that is the when released in the body, speaks to the brain, particularly the hypothalamus of the brain, which in turn says, oh, I'm full. You don't need to eat anymore. But when we become resistant, when those signaling mechanisms become dysfunctional, that's when we run into problems.
One more note, you can get a free chapter of Paul Rosen's book, The Missing Piece. Just go to his website, acunatural.com, acunatural.com, and fill out the dialog box that pops up. Rest assured, no information you provide will ever be shared with anyone else. So, what are you waiting for? Get going on your personal road to wellness today.